Hey everyone, how's it going? So I want to show a couple of my planes that I have so far in my collection. I actually just got back from an antique store today, and I found two new ones that I'm going to hopefully get some time to restore and hopefully use. So, which ones are they? I picked up this Stanley number 5 today, Stanley Bailey number 5. Seems to be in pretty decent shape, and what I mean by that is not the look, but it has all the hardware. So none of the pieces are missing. The blade actually seems to be in decent condition, so I'll just need to sharpen it and make sure it's flat. I'll need to check that the sole of the plane is also flat, which is pretty easy to check, but not easy to correct. It's not. So. I don't know. I think so. Another key thing to look for in these is if you get the bronze hardware. I think this might be, but it's just extremely dirty because underneath the blackness of the grime on here, I think it's the bronze one. So it's not the plastic knob. So on my number 6, this has the plastic knob here. But the more sought after years, you'll have the bronze knob, which is what I try to find. It also usually will have the bronze matching hardware on the top. So if you get that to polish up nice, you can really make a nice plane. There's a website you can check to validate pretty close what year or what range of years your plane was made in, just based on a couple things that you look for. A couple things that you look for is if it's a Stanley, there should be a description of Stanley somewhere. Sometimes it's vertical, sometimes it's horizontal. On the plane, there'll be different numbering styles, whether or not it says Bailey on it, whether or not it's a corrugated bottom, a couple other things like that you can look for just to easily identify a given year. So we got a number 5, and we also got a number 4. I think I got the 4 for $7, and I think the 5 for 10, somewhere on there. This one obviously is missing the handle, so we'll have to make a handle for that, or find one if we can. To be honest, I wasn't sure if this was a number 4 immediately looking at it. I also didn't know if it was a Stanley immediately looking at it either, because there's no Stanley indication on the plate, which is interesting, but there is at the top of on the actual plane blade. So there should have, it says made in USA on the front here, which is, I don't think I have another one that says that. So this is a Stanley number 4, but it has a corrugated bottom. So it's going to be a little different. And this one also, I don't think is I'm not sure. I have to figure out what this is. My guess would be that this is an older version of this one that I currently have, would be my suspicions. So if it's an earlier model here, that'd be pretty cool. But it also has a flat sole, so I'm actually excited to have one of those, just to kind of complete out my collection. One thing to note about the number 4 with the number 5 that I just got is that they're the same widths. So if you go like this, which hold on, let me actually, I don't know if it's gonna let me draw this blade. Okay, I'm not gonna do that right now. I was gonna say I don't want to set it on the blade and dull the blade out anymore. You can see that the soles are the same widths. But if you go to a number 6 like this, you'll see actually that the number 6 starts to begin to get a little thicker, which has a lot of practical purposes. So in the number 5, they're pretty common to find. I think they're a little more common than finding a number 6 just out in the wild. I restored the number 6, and I think I fixed the handle, had a crack in it, put a similar looking wood on there and stained it to match, and then I just sanded it. So you really can't tell. It came out actually pretty decent. It is missing like the back kind of arch on there, so I can like you can't really do anything about that if you want to keep the existing handle. So that's the only negative on that. Yeah, so right now let's go through my collection kind of. So I have the number 7, which is like one of my favorite tools ever. I use this thing all the time. I love I love using it. I love getting any excuse to use it, really. This one has a corrugated bottom. This is a heavy tool. Using it after a while, depending on what kind of wood it is, if it's any kind of hardwood, I mean, you're going to be in for a workout using this thing. This one is in the best shape that you could possibly get. I got this from a seller online. This was my first plane. He restored them, and this thing is in awesome condition. I also spent the most money on this plane, so you get what you pay for, right? Like that was my first plane I ever got. I needed something to join boards for something I was working on, and I'm like, well, I probably am going to get that anyway, so that was like my splurge purchase. I've had it for about 3 years, and it's been incredible. I use it all the time. It's still one of my favorite planes to go and grab to joint boards. It's really nice. The weight of it too, something about it is just extremely satisfying to use, but also very useful to use to your advantage. Because once you get going, assuming you have a sharp blade, it just kind of carries, all the weight. You keep the momentum going better than you would with something that weighed a little less. My number 7 is probably my favorite tool. Moving down to number 6, found this at an antique store for like $10. Super bad shape, but it doesn't have the corrugated bottom, it has a flat bottom. This is the same, let me just check, it's the same width as a number 7, so for all practical purposes, you can use this for jointing too. But you can see it's significantly shorter, if you can see that on the camera. See that? I would say it's about 5 or 6 inches shorter. So you're not going to get the same use out of it. You're not going to use it in all the same settings. If I was going to joint 2 boards, I would grab my number 7 every time. The number 6 is for a little more special purposes. If your board's a little shorter, or if the 2 boards are a little shorter, you're trying to join. Okay, yeah, maybe grab the number 6. I don't use it a whole lot. I still would grab the number 7. I found it, which is pretty rare, so I had to get it, and anyway, it completes the collection anyway. So, but there are certain cases when you may want to use it. Again, if it's a smaller board, or another reason, if the board is really, let's say it has a high spot here, low spot here, and a high spot here, but it's in really tight spot, you could probably get in the way with the number 6, and it would make take it off faster. It's really preference, right? Like, I'm sure if you really get down to the detail, you may find a use case where a number 6 is better than a number 7. I haven't got there yet, so I'm still learning, but that's what I think at least. Moving down to a number 5. So this is what I just picked up today, so I have no experience with this plane. I'm interested to see where I'll end up using this the most, and that's kind of the thing with these planes. It's kind of how you use them, and how you develop the feel for these planes, and kind of how you make them work for you, really. Now, by definition, and if you really want to get technical, yes, each of these planes is supposed to serve a different purpose in a different set of circumstances. But to the user, you can kind of navigate around those. Like, some people suggest that you can do everything you need to do with the number 4, and technically you can if you develop that skill. But if you have all of them and you know when and where to use them, you can do. I think you can achieve. I don't want to say better results, but just different results and how it works better for you. So the number 5 is thinner. So you're not going to be using it for jointing purposes at all. This one is going to be used as your, it's probably going to be more of a go-to surfacing plane is what I would anticipate using this. So if you have a board, you need to surface the top. That's probably where you're going to see best results with this, because you get the advantage of the length, but you also get the advantage of the smaller width, which is going to help you glide the plane over that surface a little better. So that's probably what I'm going to use this for. So if I ever have to surface big boards again like that, some of the monkey pod slabs I had, I may go and reach for the number 5, because it's going to work better than the number 4 probably for surfacing. So this is my number 4. I've had this about, oh man, probably a year. I've used it a whole lot actually. It was in real rough shape. I restored this one. I think I got this one for, I always get them for around 10, 15 bucks at these antique stores, so somewhere around there. It's got the corrugated bottom. Real nice shape. The handles, the knobs are real nice shape. The thing was completely rusted out when I got it, but it's get cleaned up super nice. It's got some small like perforations in the sides of the metal, but the base is flat. The blade is good, it's sharp. So I use this all the time. Well, okay, if you watch that video, I surfaced the Florida live oak. This is what I use to get my reference edge before I pass it through my planer. So that's how I kind of use it, right? Like, I have the planer, I'm going to use the planer, but I don't have a jointer, and I don't really need a jointer, because I can get the reference edge that I need with all the hand tools, and then pass it through my planer, on its reference edge to make sure you're flat. That's the kind of process that I'm working with. I really don't ever expect in the near future of getting a jointer like the machine. Honestly, I don't need one. I can do most things by hand, and I like just improving that process. Now, could I do away with the planer? Sure. It would just take me way longer to do everything by hand, and to be honest with you, it's hot. It's summer in Florida, and I really don't want to do that. Maybe that'll change, but for right now, I'm happy with using the planer for all that stuff. So this is the one I just picked up today, the number 4. We already looked at this. I gotta do some research. I'll get back to you when I find out more information on this. I'm guessing again that it's an older version of what I already have, so I'm going to use it for exactly the same purposes. I'm going to get into some more technical planes now for some more special purposes. So this is a Stanley, I always forget the name of this. This is a Stanley number 78. I also found this at an antique store for, I don't know, this was $7 or $8, I think. It's missing some parts, so you're supposed to have a guide fence on the side, because this is a rabbit plane, or what's the other term that you call it? I think a rebate plane, I think, is the equivalent in Europe. So basically the idea is if you have the fence installed, some people don't use the fence, but if you have a board, I don't know if this is going to show on camera, you can run it along the side, and the blade goes up to the edge like that, so you can make a rabbit. Or I kind of like the term rebate, just because I think it's a little more obvious what you're talking about. You can make a rebate with this, so which is useful for. I'm trying to think of an example. I don't know an example right now. If you're making kind of like your what word am I looking for, guys? I forget. Like the shiplap stuff, whatever. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about, that stuff. You can do some more like edging work, I'm just going to call it like that. Holy smokes, that was slipping my mind right there. I haven't used this a whole lot because, again, it's missing the fence. I really haven't had much use for this. Again, when I found it, so I'm going to pick it up. But the time when I do need it, I think it's going to be helpful. This is a Stanley block plane. It's not antique at all. It's I don't know how old this is, maybe like 10, 20 years old or something like that. I use this all the time, specifically for chamfering edges. Works really well. These block planes are nice because you get a lot of control. They're also nice because this, I think, is a low angle block plane, which is helpful because if you can cut across end grain without splitting it. I say that with a grain of salt because you probably should still be mindful whenever you're planing across end grain of the ends, because if it even catches, I mean, you risk tear out and stuff like that. especially on certain types of wood that have a more tendency to chip out. Like walnut. Walnut, I chipped out the end trying to plane end grain with that. So you're supposed to take this, chamfer the edge, right, to cut the fibers, and then you should be able to plane across without, or reducing the risk of splitting. That's what you're supposed to do, but a lot of times I forget. So this one is my Stanley 71.5 hand router plane. This tool is such a useful tool. One, I think it's faster than a router, just because it's already set up, like ready to go. I mean, you don't have to mess with the bits or anything, and you kind of, if you have it in the just like in a nice setup on your bench, you can do things really fast with this, and you can kind of get pretty clean results. If you're doing any kind of work that you're going to see, you might run into an issue with this versus like a router, just because of how crisp you can get an edge on that. This is going to be for, I found this more useful in instances where I've made like legs with what's it called, like tenons, anything like that, or anything that you have a oh my goodness, I'm looking for the same joint. I cannot remember. You know what I'm talking about? Like if you have two boards like this, and there's a cutout and they piece together. That's what I use it for all the time. That's gonna bug me so much. I just forget the name of that joint. Whatever. That's what I use it for. These are getting a little expensive. So if you find one of these, you gotta pick it up. I mean, these are well into, like, depending on what year and if it has all the hardware and the blades too. You could be spending over 100, 120, 130, up to high $100. So pretty expensive tool, and I think they've gotten more expensive. They're kind of an indispensable tool though once you have it in your shop and you figured out how useful they really are. Like I love them. Like my live edge end table, I needed it. That's how I made the angle and legs for that, just because I could get just tighter control over my the joins on the legs. Could I have done it with my router? Sure, but I just find hand tool stuff way more like satisfying to do. So the last one, I think that this is the only new plane that I've ever bought. Like new as in like never used before, not used. So this is a Stanley Sweetheart. What is this? What number is this? This is the low angle jack plane. I don't remember what number it is though. I don't think it says either. It might not have a number. This is a low angle jack plane. One thing you'll immediately know when you have these and you pick it up is they're kind of heavy. Like they got some weight to them for sure. This is about as long as, or it is as long as my number 5. It's got some kind of neat features. You can adjust the throat on this, on the sole. You twist the knob, and then you can widen your cutting hole there, depending on how much you want of material you're trying to take out. I find the adjustment a little bit finicky on this one. Like I'm not the biggest fan of it. It requires a little more dialing of the settings, for lack of better words. But again, I got this new, and the reason I got this is because this is going to be your go-to plane if you're planing any kind of end grain, and you're not using the block plane. For example, if you have like two, I'm trying to think if I have an example. If you've seen that my bench I made, that bench that has like the waterfall edges and they're long, they're about a foot long. You can do that by hand. You don't need power tools to do that, because if you figure out where your 45 is and you put that piece of wood in your vise, you can take this and put it on a super low setting, and you should be able to plane that miter joint with this and really clean it up so it's consistent all the way across. That's what I use this for. You won't be able to do that as successfully with let's say a number 4, just because the angle that the blade is way more aggressive. These low angles are designed really for end grain cutting. just because of how low and soft the blade angle really is. You can use it for other things too if you're trying to take super light material off, or if you're trying to plane over a knot or something like that. I use these for the joins I make when I make all like those boxes, right? Like those, like all the miter joins on the boxes. I like to do those. I like doing them by hand. I find that I can get just a little tighter control over how they fit. I can use my miter saw for that, but I don't like doing them in. I don't feel like I can get a smooth cut in the table saw that I have, just because it's really just made for ripping boards. It's just your box store run-of-the-mill table saw that's just meant for ripping rough lumber. So the difficulty is when, like, I just don't feel comfortable using that to get that angle that I need, just because it doesn't have the sled, and trying to use a push stick while maintaining that angle on a straight way. You can do it, yes, but do I feel comfortable with it? No, I feel more comfortable doing it with my hand. So that's what I prefer, and you can achieve the same results. I think that's it, guys. I think that is all the planes. Again, I find these all the time in antique stores. You can fix them up, just buy the hardware if you're missing any hardware, but you don't have to buy these new. And the old ones are just so good, and they're bulletproof. They're not going to break on you at all. So just with a little sharpening, make sure the sole stays flat. Yeah, so a little different content. Again, woodworking is like my main thing. I know way more about woodworking, I think, than chainsaws, but that might change. I don't know. But woodworking, I got some projects coming up. Making some picture frames, I think. I think I'm also going to be making like a display case. So I might be going to the wood shop in a couple weeks, hopefully. If I do that, I can make something on like the wood I brought back or something like that. I don't know if that content's interesting. I've had a harder time historically getting views on any of my woodworking content. I don't really know how to make that stuff like good, and like as consistent. You know what I mean? I'm not sure. I'll think about it. So anyway, guys, yeah, just hanging out Saturday afternoon. Yeah, we'll take it easy. See you.